Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you today on this bright, sunny Wednesday. Far more temperate Wednesday, a Wednesday that is not quite as painful for being outside. I read all night long. I thought that I wouldn't. I had a bit of work to do, and then I thought, okay, you'll read, but then after a while, you really should catch up on some sleep. You should get a few hours of sleep, and I did not. I did not. I did not get a few hours of sleep. Instead, I read straight through until morning, and I bet you can guess what it was. It was Pogo. I read Pogo and just enjoyed the heck out of it all night long. The only chaser that I had was that Regency romance hardcover mystery novel. I read that as well, and it was surprisingly good, surprisingly textured. I could actually understand from reading it why the people involved with it, the editor or the agent or whatnot, thought maybe it should be a hardcover. It's a stupid, invidious distinction, but nevertheless, publishing still does make that distinction sometimes. This is good enough to be a hardcover. I can sort of see that. I don't agree with it at all. I've always thought of that as really thinly encoded snobbery. But it was very, very good. So it's a hardcover. I don't know that I'll be keeping it. I don't know that it was good enough to warrant a space on the shelf. Actually, a number of you emailed me about yesterday's Brattle Hall right along those lines, saying, well, okay, you talked about all these things and you're intrigued about all these things, but how many of these things do you think you'll keep? And that's valid. And there's nothing wrong with that. Probably quite a few of them I will not keep. Quite a few of them were blind chances that I took. You know, when the books are $1 a piece, you can take all sorts of gambles, and I don't keep the gambles here. I have weaned myself off the attitude towards books that says if I have ever owned it or ever read it or ever planned to read it, I must keep it. No, absolutely not. No. It isn't even a criterion anymore that if I've read a book and liked it, I will keep it. I'm trying to impose a much stricter guideline on what I keep. Meaning not only that I read it and liked it, but that I read it, I liked it, and I go back to it. If I read it and liked it and it just sits there, what's a good example of that? Golden Gate by Vikram Seth, his novel in verse. Very good example of that. Chickering's scholarly edition of Beowulf that has the split page of language, and it's got tons and tons of notes, a long introduction, tons of end notes. Things like that. I look at things like that and I think, all right, I read it, I liked it, I can definitely recommend it, but I don't go back to it, so it can't stay. so you, those of you who emailed on the subject are right. I will almost certainly recycle half the books that I found yesterday, but not that Pogo volume. It was a hoot. So anyway, we've got periodicals. We have Men's Health. I haven't re-upped my subscription to Men's Health in a long, long time, so I have no idea why I'm still getting it. But in the back of every issue, there are two things that have interested me here. The thing that sometimes is of interest to me is in the front, is sometimes they'll do a brief tech guide. I still haven't figured out what tech magazine I actually want to subscribe to. Instead of getting bits and pieces in Men's Health or Men's Journal or whatever, I really ought to just subscribe to a beginner's, generalist, interested tech magazine. I just haven't figured out which one that is. Again, I will put the question to you. If you read such magazines, what do you recommend? The way that I thought that I would figure it out would be to go to my Barnes & Noble here in Boston. Has a huge newsstand. The last newsstand of its kind that Boston will ever see of that size. And there's a whole section on technology. What I need to do the next time I'm in that area or I've got an errand around the corner, I need to go in and just budget 15 minutes to go through, browse those magazines, and see which one is giving me the kind of feel that I want. Because I do love my tech. I still haven't. Some of you have been asking. I threatened or mused last year that I might start a second channel devoted to tech. And I haven't given up on the idea. I still like the idea. I just wonder if it wouldn't be... The first question that I had about it was, would it be a sinkhole for money? Would I feel like I need to buy product in order to talk about them on the channel? Because it'd be a fledgling channel. It wouldn't have any kind of growth because I'm not a tech guru. I don't have any editing. I don't have any of the stupid self-glamorizing B-roll that all of those channels seem to think is essential to talk about terabytes. So that channel would never grow, which means no manufacturer would ever send me a review item. So it would all be stuff that I bought, and then you can guess what my mental response was to that reservation. well, you buy it anyway. So you're plenty to talk about. If I made a video a week on that tech channel, I would be going for half a year. We'd have plenty to talk about. And there's no reason why I need to have the item in order to talk about it, right? I would need to have the item in order to talk about the user experience, in order what it's like to use it, but not just general thoughts about what it does and doesn't do. There are plenty of tech channels that do that. But anyway, I like those little tech tidbits at the beginning of Men's Health, and then sometimes in the very back of the issue, long after they figure that they've lost all their readers, they will sometimes have a story, an actual freelance story, and those tend to be very good. The one here is by Mike Bender. There's getting sick, and then there's what this guy had: a decades-long struggle with a mysterious illness that short-circuited his nervous system and ransacked his body, testing his patience, his marriage, and his resolve. Then he built the house that just might save him. And the piece is called The Quiet House. And that won't have anything to do with getting ripped or shredded, and it will probably be very good. That I've been pleased by Men's Health, Men's Journal, even Runner's World many, many times. And when I was up in Vermont, I saw that Mark Richardson had Trout Magazine, which is all about fishing, but there are in that magazine also longer articles that look to be the same kind of really good. The person on the cover here is Joseph Baina, and he discovered later in life that he was a son of Arnold Schwarzenegger. So he is their cover star. Haven't read the article, and then we have two stalwarts. We have the New Republic, which I read from front to back, but I concentrate on the high-profile book section in the back, and the Nation, which is done on newsprint, and it also has a lively book section. No idea what books are covered here. Are we going to be able to? You going to be able to tell me? No. Sometimes they just skip it. Okay, there's an article here on the new, I think it's a New York Review of Books collection of Edith Wharton's ghost stories. There's a review of the new Matrix movie. Yes, Ghost, the New York Review of Books new reprint of Ghost by Edith Wharton. This piece is by Krithika Varagur, but I also want to point out in the Baffler, Jack Hansen did a piece on Edith Wharton's ghost stories that was superb, absolutely superb. If I can remember, I'll leave a link to it down below. But I don't know if it's paywall. And then we have two packages, and then we'll be done. So I've got a bunch of periodicals to read. I noticed, to a little bit of horror on my part, that I have a small stack of unread periodicals, which is something I've mocked people about for my whole life, and something that I completely avoided in my life because I had a ritual where I went to a little Chinese food restaurant in Chinatown here in Boston and read all of my periodicals very carefully, very lovingly, phone off, no one in the world knowing where I was, pen in hand, to annotate, pull out the stuff that I wanted, all that sort of stuff. And I haven't been back to that place in years, and probably 4 or 5 years. And I don't have any substitute ritual. I don't have a substitute ritual here, and now I'm realizing that will occasionally cause pile-ups of unread periodicals. Maybe I need to come up with a substitute, but I don't know what that would be. I guess I'll just read them here. I'll just have to set aside time to read them here. So what have we got here? This is a finished copy. Oh my, look at all this stuff. Okay, this is Pankaj Mishra. I know as a nonfiction writer and a commentator, but this is a novel. This is Run and Hide by Pankaj Mishra. Interesting. A novel. So what do we have here? This comes out on the 1st of March, and it is absolutely buried in blurbs. Just buried in. That's what this whole thing is blurbs. You're not going to tell me anything about the book. No, you're not. You're not going to tell me anything about the book. This is all blurbs. Okay, well, let's see what the book says about the book. Growing up in a small railway town, Arun always dreamed of escape. He accepted to a prestigious Indian Institute of Technology, enabled through a great sacrifice of his low-caste parents, is seemingly his golden ticket out of a life plagued by everyday cruelties and deprivations. At the predominantly male campus, he meets two students from similar backgrounds. Unlike Arun, scarred by his childhood and an uneasy interloper among go-getters, they possess the sheer will and confidence to break through merciless social barriers. The alumni of ITT eventually go on to become the financial wizards of their generation, working hard and playing hard from East Hampton to Tuscany, the beneficiaries of unprecedented financial and sexual freedom. But while his friends play out Gatsby-style fantasies, Aaron fails to leverage his elite education for social capital. He decides to pursue the writerly life, retreating to a small village in the Himalayas with his aging mother. Okay, all right. How much of this is autofiction? I don't know. I guess I shouldn't care. I shouldn't care. I should let the book dictate itself. So that is the 1st of March. We have a novel by Pankaj Mishra. That is interesting. And then we have a bigger and significantly heavier package. I don't know what. Will this be many books or one great big book? There's one great big book that I very much want. I don't think this will be it because this is a finished copy. And the big book that I want isn't in a finished copy yet. There's no reason for me to keep you in suspense. There's a gigantic new biography of Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter that I simply cannot wait to read. I'm just dying to read it. But this is not that. It's too brightly colored. What is this? Oh, okay, great. Fantastic. All right, this is out already. This is Sarah J. Maas. This is her new book. This is the sequel to the book Crescent City. This is House of Sky and Breath. This is a gigantic series that she's doing. I don't know if I reviewed the first one, but oh wow, okay. House of Earth and Blood was the first Crescent City book, and one of the blurbs here is from Tom Shippey writing for the Wall Street Journal. Interesting. Okay. So this is out already, and after an electrifying first installment, the author takes readers back to Crescent City for more of Bryce Quinlan and Hunt Alathar's dizzyingly action-packed adventures, and an even steamier continuation of their love story. After saving Crescent City from destruction at the end of the House of Earth and Blood, Bryce and Hunt would love nothing more than just catch their breath and figure out what their future might hold. So far, those that rule Crescent City have kept their word and left Bryce and Hunt alone. But as the rebels chip away at the leader's power, danger nears. Bryce, Hunt, and their friends become entangled in the rebels' plans and must make a choice: stay silent while others are oppressed, or fight for what's right and protect the world they love. And since this is a fantasy series, it won't actually have Twitter. It'll come close. You can tell already it has the posturing self-righteousness and navel-gazing narcissism of Twitter, but it doesn't actually have Twitter. And I read the first book of this, really liked it. My only problem with it, I don't know where I wrote. Maybe I just wrote about it for Open Letters. That could be. I don't remember where I wrote about it. My only major complaint with it is that Sarah J. Maas and her publisher and her agent are lying to you about what this is. They're saying that Crescent City is her adult debut, her adult fiction debut series. That is not true, even slightly. This might be fat, and it might have even more F-bombs than normal YA fiction does, but this is very much YA fiction. Look at the title. The something of something and something. That is required in YA. If you don't do that, your house will be bombed by fans on Goodreads. So that is, and note the description. The whole of the fate of an entire city rests on the relationship between two characters, the sexual relationship between two characters. So that alone would be enough. Also, the box ticking in current year, that's another feature of YA, is that it has to box tick. So there'll be an aphasic character. There'll be found family, whatever that means. There'll be the villains will be very easily recognizable from a long way off because they will be cis-het white men, and so on and so forth down the line. That also is now a de rigueur a part of YA. This is just YA on steroids, but it's not adult fiction. You wouldn't think. I mean, you wouldn't think that it'd matter much, that I wouldn't care much. It's so fairly obvious. The something of something and something. That is YA. You wouldn't think that I'd really care, except that when you blur the lines like this, you make it possible for, the kind of YA that we're talking about here is very comfortable simply resting on a couch of cliches. It's very comfortable doing that. It's very comfortable kind of prose. And there's way too much of that. There's way too much comfortable prose in the world just as it is. And that encourages writers who actually do write fiction for adults to to be equally comfortable, to be equally reductive. Look, she's a best-selling author and she's doing this. Maybe I don't have to worry about nuance. But I really need to read the first one again. I think the first one was also 1,000 pages long, so I really need to read the first one. I think to get the full flavor of this. I mean, what is this? Is this 1,000 pages? It's awful close. This would probably count for March of the Mammoths. No, 798. 798 pages. I'm 2 pages short for this counting for March of the Mammoths. But one thing that it shares in common with the first Crescent City book, which was what again? What was it? House of Sky and Breath. No, that's the second one. They're so intensely interchangeable. House of Earth and Blood. House of Earth and Blood was the first one. House of Sky and Breath is the second one. What'll be the third one? House of Light and Darkness? House of Red and Black? I don't know. But like that first one, this is beautifully made. Just incredible end papers. Is it going to be the same thing on the back? Let's take a look. Yes, same thing on the back. Just lovely. And Crescent City was the same way. The first Crescent City was the same way. The Something of Something and Something for the first book was the same way. This reads like a rocket. So those of you who are Sarah J. Maas fans will already know that. It reads like a rocket. It's easy, fun reading. Very involving. Page-turning, to use the adjective of a bygone era. So despite, it flying under false colors, it is very much flying under false colors. To say that this is not YA fiction is a lie. Maybe they're not saying that anymore. And I'm certain that there's no retail bookstore in the world that would shelve this in adult fiction and risk losing all of the sales on the book because the people it's obviously aimed at don't know to look there. The people it's obviously aimed at don't spend much time in the adult section of fiction. Some of them do, though. Some of them let their love for YA lead them to Catherine Mansfield or George Eliot or Jane Austen. Some of them let that happen, and that's wonderful. But you wouldn't, maybe from my tone, you would think that I wasn't recommending it. But the first book was terrific. It's just terrific. It bugged me a little in the marketing, but that's a small price. You certainly can't carry that over the doorstep of the book itself. The book itself was an effectively done novel. So there you go. Quite different. 2 works of fiction. Couldn't be any different. One sinks into the other like a pebble in a pond. YA and adult fiction that may or may not be heavily autobiographical. Plus a bunch of periodicals. So that's the mail for today. I think it's time for the Bean and I to go on a stroll. Well, I think it's time to do that. She was pretty anxious last night. Not nervous the way my dear Malin was, but edgy. She was looking for trouble. She was looking for somebody to look at her the wrong way. Sometimes she's like that. Sometimes she's almost cuddly when we're on our walks, where she sees another dog or another person, and she thinks, well, this is interesting. Let's walk up to them and see what happens. Sometimes not. Usually she sees another person and screams at them at the top of her lungs to pet her. You can literally hear her 2 streets away. She's not yelling at them. She's not growling or barking at them. She's insisting that they come over and fuss over her. And most of them just melt into laughter and do that. And she also screams at dogs to let them know, look, I don't know if we're ever going to meet nose to nose. I don't know if we're going to get that close, but I want you to know the pecking order here and that I'm at the top. So she was very, very keyed up to do both those things last night. We'll see if she's a little calmer today now that it's not quite so cold. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.